A little bit of a heads up of my feelings towards Halle Berry. She is one of the nicest and most talented actresses in the business. It is very, very nice to have her in Jeddah today, and she will speak about, various moments of her impressive career. So I hope you enjoy it. There won't be questions today, it's just in conversation, but I hope you enjoy the full hour of it. Thank you so much for being here.
Good evening. I'm Dorothy Dandridge.
I'd like you to meet Aurora Monroe, also called Storm.
My friends call me Jinx.
I'm not what you think I am. Brian used to say something all the time. Accept the good. Accept the good, Jerry.
This is the girl I've been seeing. I wasn't alone.
It's about the fact that you can't love me the way I deserve to be loved. That's what this is about. You don't love me, you don't love Jacqueline, you can love your damn self. I'm out of here. Look in the mirror. Look at my face. I'm his mother.
You find her promiscuous?
Whatever do you hope to die?
You're gonna find you, okay, honey?
We promise.
You've got the best team of people in this whole city working to find you.
Sweat! That's called it out here. I'm gonna go. Smile sweetly. And say very well, thank you, and yourself.
I saw what you did. I'm offering you a second chance. You gonna take it?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it.
You know who that is?
You ought to.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, let's give the warmest Jeddah welcome to Oscar winner Halle Berry.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Welcome, welcome, Halle. Everybody's very happy to have you, right, guys?
Gosh, thank you. I'm so very happy to be here. It's my first time here, and my God, it's been fantastic.
Well, let's start in simple terms. And from the start, did you always want to become an actress?
No. This is probably, when I was growing up, the absolute last thing I thought I would be doing. I wanted to be a journalist. First I wanted to be a gymnast. I thought I was going to be the first black woman to win a gold medal at the Olympics. That's what my dream was as a little girl. And then I wanted to be a journalist.
So how did it happen?
Well, actually quite by accident. When I graduated high school, I wanted to leave. I grew up in Cleveland, in a suburb of Cleveland, a very small town. And I wanted desperately to see beyond my backyard. And so I moved to Chicago, and I started modeling there because I thought I could make some quick money and save money for college. I started modeling, and while I was modeling, out of sheer boredom, I wandered into Second City. And that's sort of an improv acting troupe sort of study. And I wandered into there, and I realized that I loved it, and I ended up staying there 2 years. And my teacher there at the end of 2 years said, she knew that I was just there to sort of kill time because I was, bored and needed something to do in my off hours. And she said, I really think you have talent. I think you should pursue a career in acting. And even then I thought, no way, that's not in my plan. And she said, well, it should be. I think you should really consider that. And I took her words to heart. And then about maybe a month or two after that, I get this phone call from a man out of the blue. And he said, he was the manager of a girl that I met in my beauty pageant. And he called me up and he said, hey, I'm looking for Halle Berry. Are you Halle Berry? And I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, my name is Vincent Cirencione. I'm a manager in New York. I heard all about you from Sandy. Can you act? I said, said, well, I don't know, I've been in classes for 2 years. He says, put yourself on tape, and if you're any good, then come here and audition for the soap opera. I said, okay, because I knew her and I trusted her. I flew out there, and then that started I didn't get that job, but that started my ball rolling, and he convinced me to move to New York, which I did, and sort of went from there.
Yeah, and then we have to say that, in New York and in Hollywood, it's not always a yes. It's often a lot of no's before your big yes, isn't it?
Oh, I got a lot of no's at the beginning, yes. Yeah, that's part of it, being able to persevere, I think, and know yourself and refuse to take no for an answer. Once you make up your mind that that's what you want to do, that that's your path, you have to be relentless in your pursuit, I think, and you absolutely cannot have a plan B. Everyone I've ever met that had a plan B, guess what? They're doing their plan B. Not their A plan.
Well, we're very happy that you stuck to your plan A, aren't we?
Yeah.
So let's go to your first film, Jungle Fever, not too shabby, Spike Lee. How do you remember the experience of stepping on a film set, It can be quite intimidating. It's a movie set and it's Spike Lee.
Oh yeah, it was very intimidating. I mean, Spike was bigger than life then, he's bigger than life now. He's such a character. And I was very lucky because it was my first film, and Spike gave me an opportunity I had a small part, with Sam Jackson as, I lovingly call her Viv the crackhead head. And he allowed me to stay for the entire production, and he let me stay in an apartment above his store called Spike Lee's Joint, and he allowed me to do that because I told him I'm interested in learning. I want to absorb all of what this is. I want to learn about all the departments, the cinematographer, the set design, the costumes, everything. And so what I would do in my off time was just shadow around and learn about all the other departments and everything it took to make a motion picture. And I got to do that on my first movie making experience. And I have to say it served me well throughout my career, understanding what everyone is going through and how hard everyone else has to work to make it all happen for the actors that are more forward facing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a collaborative thing
Yes.
to make a movie, and it's very
Yes.
important to acknowledge those who make you look good basically
Yes.
on the film.
Yes.
And Spike, what do you think is his, a great differentiating point as a filmmaker?
Well, I think Spike was very bold, when he came onto the scene. He was unrelentless in his opinion and his approach. He had a style that was unique to Spike. He had something to say that was very unique to Spike. And I think he carved out a place all for himself with his originality and creativity and his intellect, and his love of his community. He always led with love of his community. And I became, we're still friends to this day. We became very close in that time because, he didn't really want me for that movie. And I tease him about that all the time. He said no about 5 times. He wanted me to play his wife. And I said, no, I want to play the crackhead. And he said, no, but you're not the crackhead. I said, I am the crackhead. He said, you're not the crackhead, you're pretty. And I thought, oh God. I said, I'm trying to get rid of that title. Can you please, like that? So after about 5 times, he finally let me do it. He finally let me come in and audition for the crackhead, and I got that part.
So you had good intuition even then because we always say there's a good part and there's a part that's good for me. Did you have that intuition even back then?
Well, coming from beauty pageants, there's a stigma that I felt like when I came into the industry that was placed on me, that, oh, she's just a pretty face. She really is not talented. So very early on, I knew that I would have to fight for roles that were against type, against the way people wanted to cast me. And Spike will tell you today, he wanted to cast me for just that. And I refused to do that. And I knew that that would be sort of the death of my acting career if I didn't really show right, at the start that there was more to me than met the eye. And he luckily gave me that opportunity to start that way. So that was very important to me. And that's still important to me, even to this day, to make sure I fight for those roles that allow me to transcend and to always grow and stretch myself and work my craft.
Yeah, you've definitely done that. Let's talk about Boomerang, because that was the breakthrough film, right? It was an Eddie Murphy starring film, but it made you a star, didn't it? How did that change your life, and how was it a learning curve to work with Eddie Murphy himself?
Well, Eddie, contrary to what people think, I thought I'm going to work with Eddie Murphy and I'm going to be laughing the whole time, right?
Oh, he's quite serious.
Very. And most comedians are. Most comedians that I've ever known or worked with, they're a little dark. They can be dark. They have a dark sense of humor. And I think it's that darkness that propels them, to find the humor in everyday life. And I think out of pain comes comedy. And I think I learned that about Eddie on that movie. I learned about his work ethic, but I also, learned about the pain. I think that was just below the surface of who he was. And that was interesting to watch his process and to work alongside him.
And what changes when you're in a role that people are all of a sudden recognizing you for? How does it change one's life? Especially in Hollywood, where you can go from anonymity to fame overnight.
I think that's probably the hardest part. I think that's the part of the business that you don't exactly sign up for. And how can you? You have no idea what that will mean when you lose your anonymity and your ability to move through the world in a seamless way and have private moments.
Go to the supermarket.
Just the basic things, that's the hard part. But it is par for the course. And I managed it just fine until I had my children. And then when I had my children, then my wheels just came completely off. Because now it's okay for me to have to go in public and, but not my children. And so for a while in Hollywood, it was sort of a phenomenon that children were being chased and harassed and terrorized by the media. And it took a while before Hollywood finally caught up and got the memo that this is really unhealthy, what we're doing to children, and that started to change. And I remember I had to go to Sacramento and fight to actually get the law changed so that my daughter, who had been so harassed by the paparazzi, she grew up for the first 6 years of her life in the backyard, really never even going out into the world. And when she started preschool, she was hounded and hunted and harassed and terrorized, so much so she didn't want to go to school. And she would cry, and I think now at 15 years old, I see some of the ramifications of that early life, and a bit of her paranoia and her sometimes inability to be social. I think all of that stemmed from her early years with the men, she called them, who were always there and always flashing and always screaming and shouting and really terrorizing her.
Yeah, because, as a public figure, they probably expect you to be under the limelight, but your children never sign up for it, and there is no law that authorizes anyone to go against the privacy of your children.
Yeah, and they're not mature enough to handle it. Like their frontal cortex is still developing at those ages. They don't understand what that is. But as an adult, yes, it's par for the course. And I've accepted that. And usually I'm always happy to see everybody usually is very, very lovely to me, and it's always a nice exchange. But children, that was something different.
I fully agree. Let's talk about the projects you fought for. Introducing Dorothy Dandridge was one of those, basically. Yes. You produced it, you fought for it to be made, you gave it your heart and soul. I remember those days. And, it also, marked a turning point in your career as an actress. So how do you remember that experience, and why from the start? What was your fascination with her life?
Well, Dorothy was someone that I grew up with. As a black woman, there weren't many images of people like me on television or in the movies to relate to. And I remember when I first saw her in Carmen Jones, for the first time, I had a vivid memory of seeing, wow, that's someone that looked like me. Literally looks like me, you know what I mean? I saw myself in her, and that stayed with me all my life, to see someone of color, a woman of color, as she was, and as not only beautiful, but as graceful, as part of Hollywood royalty. You know, I hadn't seen that, right? And so that always stuck with me. And she was from Cleveland. I later learned she and I were born in the same hospital. I later learned, and I just always felt a connection with her. And one day my manager came to me and he said, you know, we're going to start producing, we have to produce our own projects if you're really going to be able to portray the kind of roles you want to play. And he said, who do you want to play? And she was the first person that came to mind. One, I thought I could. I knew a lot about her at that point, and I was determined. And it wasn't easy in those days. I remember I did it with HBO, but it wasn't easy to get the money. It wasn't easy to get the yes. Shonda Rhimes, if you know who Shonda Rhimes is.
Shonda
She wrote it. Shonda Rhimes. It was one of her first screenplays. So it was a struggle, but it was one well worth it for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it also changed the public perception about
Yes.
you as an actress
Yes.
and as a producer and
Yes.
awards and all these things. So, you know, you have to trust your gut sometimes.
Yes, you do. You really do. And, you know, I had to stretch myself in brand new ways, you know, that I never had to do before, which was also another reason for doing it. So, yes. And the awards came, sort of certain validation came that hadn't happened until that point.
And it's through these kinds of events and projects that things become easier, not only for you in the future, but the likes of actresses who are trying to break the boundaries.
Yeah, it's stepping stones. You know, I look at it as all of us, we carry our ball as far as we carry it. You know, it's our obligation, our duty to carry it as far as we can. Dorothy, Lena Horne, Diane Carroll, Diana Ross, those women before me carried the ball, you know, as far as they could. And it's my job to continue.
Let's talk about the big blockbusters and X-Men and Storm. Yes, there's a huge fan base for them, and I think, and I do remember those days because to me they were a turning point. They were no longer those like superhero films that didn't have substance. All of a sudden there were actors like yourself who kind of, you know, gave identity to those characters. How aware were you of it, and how excited were you that you kind of managed to give an identity to Storm?
Well, I didn't read the comic books. I wasn't a fan. And I remember for the first movie, our director, Bryan Singer, said, you don't need to understand the comic book. You need to understand the script and what the story is about. And what I connected to, being a woman of color, of course, I connected to being a mutant. I connected to what it feels like to be sort of ostracized by your community, to feel out of place, to feel a fish out of water, to feel misunderstood, to feel unheard, unseen. Right? I understood what that was about, and that's all the mutants were. You know, they were misunderstood people that were trying to find their voice. And I thought the meaning of the movie was very important. And while it was a big action movie and it was a comic book, I did think it had a lot of substance and a lot of fun. There, I met Hugh Jackman, who is one of the nicest.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my, he's one of the best there is. Yeah.
Did you feel that X-Men became a cultural phenomenon, and when you're in it, how do you feel it from the fans when you're traveling?
Such a cultural phenomenon. I mean, there's such fans really, during that time when those movies were, you know, out, people really addressed me as Storm. I'd run out and like, Storm! Like they really, you know, they love these characters. They're beloved, right? And so I was Storm for a good 8 years.
Yes, true, because of the sequels and the Comic-Con conventions.
Yes.
It kind of, you know, becomes part of your life, doesn't it?
It does. And the characters become a part of my life. And it's always something that I will remember fondly and was proud to bring into life.
I told you before we started that I remember fondly being at the Oscars and, you know, the speech that you gave when you won the Best Actress award. I still get goosebumps when I remember it. How do you remember, I mean, I'm sure it was a little bit foggy in your head to start with, but how do you remember the whole thing?
You know, I've been answering this question now since 20 years, over 20 years. I don't remember any of it, and here's why.
You didn't expect to win, first of all.
I did not expect to win. I don't know if anybody ever expects to win. You know, anything happens, and usually it does, so, you know, you don't ever expect that. But back in these days, it's no longer the case, but it was usually whoever won the Golden Globe is who won the Oscar.
You won the SAG.
yes, but SAG wasn't what SAG is
Yeah,
today.
it's true.
It was the Golden Globe. If you didn't win the Golden Globe, you probably wouldn't win the Oscar. So any hopes I had were dashed when I lost to Sissy Spacek for the Golden Globe. And it was in that moment that I thought, hey, this was a good run. Look how far I got. I dared to take a chance, and I took the role of Monsters Ball, and all of my agents and everybody around me said this would be the end of my career. They thought, this is probably going to be it. You sure you want to do this? You might never work again. So to sit there at the night of the Golden Globes and not win, I had this knowing of, but you know what? I did it. And, I'm here. Realizing in that moment I wouldn't be there. So knowing that, I didn't write a speech. I just wanted to go and have fun and sort of bask in the moment of, this achievement, being at the Academy Awards and being nominated. So I was not prepared. So when I went up there, when they called my name, I absolutely went blank. I was not prepared at all. And all I remember was Russell Crowe walking up there and seeing his face and hearing him say, "Breathe, mate. You gotta breathe, mate." And I remember taking a big breath, turning around, and then it's kind of a blur what happened. And the next memory I really have is backstage, walking in like the shadows of behind the stage and realizing, oh shit, I have an Oscar. I think I won. Really, it was like I saw it for the first time backstage.
Well, I'll remind you what you said, and I still have goosebumps. This moment is so much bigger than me. With your tears. And it was so beautiful because it was.
And that was my subconscious talking, honestly. I had nothing prepared, and that was my subconscious, and I somehow knew that it was bigger than me. But I have to say, I am, the sad part of it for me, because that was such a big moment, but the sad part is that, there's been, like, it's 21 years now, no one else of color like me has walked through that door.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So that is a great sadness, because
Yes.
I really felt that night meant something, and it did. Women of color, awards aren't everything. We are working in the industry now in a way that we never were, right? So there has been change, and it did matter, but I have to say I'm very heartbroken as I sit here that no one else is.
It's true, because Octavia Spencer and Viola Davis both won, but for supporting actress. So we are rooting for this to be a best
And
actress.
Diana Ross should have been, Dorothy should have been first, Diana Ross should have been second, and I don't know who should have been third, but those two women should have been before me for sure.
Let's talk about Monsters Ball and that role, because, heart-wrenching is the understatement of this film. It was such a difficult part and such a difficult film, emotionally, and I'm sure, physically, because, it was quite full on. So tell us a little bit about the whole experience of accepting the role, doing it, Mark Forster. It was big.
Yes. Again, another role they didn't want me for.
Yes.
Another role. She's too pretty. And, this sentence has plagued my career, because I get very frustrated by the notion of that, because you ask yourself, how does anyone's physicality spare them any human experience? It just isn't so.
Yes.
So that's always been something that I've had to fight against. But a role like that isn't as hard for me as you might think. Being able to dig deep in that well of mine and to have a cathartic experience through making a film is actually what lights me up. It's quite the opposite, right? The action movies are a lot harder, because that's physical and you have to train and that's grinding. But to allow yourself to be vulnerable and go to those dark places and expose what's really inside, I think is actually quite liberating, quite free.
In the process of making those types of films, are you in a different frame of mind? Is it, or you're able to just leave the movie at home and, on set and go home and, detach from the emotion of it?
I'm able to leave it now. I think in the early days, like Jungle Fever, I couldn't detach. I really didn't trust the technique that I had learned, so I thought I had to be method. So for that crackhead role, I didn't shower, I didn't shave, I went to a real crack den, like I thought I had to experience it. Now today, I don't. I rely on the craft and I rely on leaving it. I think it's much healthier to leave it on the set. And now having children, the last thing I want to do is bring home these characters. You know, it's not healthy for me, it's not healthy for my family, my children, my partner. That would be a nightmare. So I like going in, but I also like taking off the clothes, taking off the wig, and leaving it there.
It's filmmaking at the end of the day, you know.
It is.
That's what
it's
it is.
make-believe, yeah.
You've never seemed afraid of challenging roles. You know, we've spoken about that. How important is it that there is a challenge, that you kind of have the butterflies of the challenge, like Frankie and Alice, for instance?
You know, that's really important. I think if you're no longer afraid or have fear or have butterflies, that says to me you don't care. Or you're doing something that you've already done, right?
Yeah,
and
the comfort zone.
Yeah, you're not being challenged. Like you're doing what you do. And I've never had that feeling, because I think every time I've accepted a role, it's been something different for me, right? Even if they all haven't panned out exactly as I would have wanted, right? That's beside the point. It's always about taking on a new challenge, taking a risk. If you don't risk big, you can never win big. And sometimes you don't always win, but you realize there'll be another opportunity. And I've learned the most in my failures than I have in my successes. I think everyone would probably agree to that. You learn the most about who you are when you fail, and how you continue on. You also learn what you're made of.
And it's impossible in such a long career to only have the good parts.
No, I don't know anyone who's had all successes. Not one actor, not one director, not one, no creative. You know, art is subjective. So how could you? You know, it's always going to be judged, and it's always going to be based on the opinions of the others, always.
Going back to X-Men and all the action roles you've had, I know you dedicate a lot of time to getting physically ready. So how important is it for you to stretch the acting exercise and everything, you know, being physically ready for the role, emotionally ready, get all of it? How important is the stretching of the acting exercise?
It's always important to me, and as I've gotten older, it's gotten more and 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 more important, you know, to stretch. And I'm really happy that still in my career, you know, I'm like 57,
and looking as gorgeous as you did in that Oscar dress, by the way, which was such a moment in itself.
But at 57, to still be able to do action movies, I just did John Wick, to still be able to, you know, that's my gymnastics training that's still in my body. You know, an athlete, once an athlete, always an athlete. So that remains, and that allows me to still do things like that at this age in my life. And I'm really excited to be able to still do that in my career.
I'm going to mention the film and then going to applaud again. Die Another Day, everybody.
I think in my second act, work on more comedy, and still the action. I've got a movie that I'm working on right now with Angelina Jolie.
Yes, Maud versus Maud.
Oh man, I'm so excited for this one. Like, she and I are gonna go like, oh, I can't wait. It's gonna be like,
yeah, because
so
she
exciting.
also feels that she would like to do more comedies, I think. So that combination is going to be quite good.
And that's going to mix comedy and action and sort of Mr. and Mrs. Smith with women meet Mission Impossible with a comedic twist. We're excited.
I'm in. I'm buying a ticket now. Well, because you like to do your own stunts, do you feel that physical acting is also important? We tackled a little bit about it. Is it as important sometimes as the emotional one?
I think so, especially, you know, I've always known this, but I learned this very much with John Wick and Chad Stahelski, the director. The reason I think the John Wick franchise has been so successful is because Keanu and everybody involved, they do their own stunts. That's a requirement.
Yeah.
And so that also frees the director to put the camera anywhere he wants, because you don't have to cut out, you know, mask that we're using doubles. You don't have to use certain angles that, you know, won't show that it's really not the actor. So I learned through that experience how vitally important it is that if you're going to do action and do it well, I think you have to do it yourself. Tom Cruise knows that with all of his action movies, right? Keanu knows that. I think it's very, very important that we do it ourselves. Michelle Yeoh knows that too, and I would love to continue. If I'm going to do action, it's going to be me, or I won't be doing it.
Well, tell us a bit about working with Keanu, because those movies are such an imprint as well of his career and being part of the whole John Wick extravaganza.
It's an amazing world. I mean, it's an amazing world. The mythology around the world, I think people love it. You know, I mean, it's a high head count. You know, that part, you know, sometimes you wonder, is this necessary? But I think because of the way it's shot, with the sort of surrealness of it all, I don't always think it's taken very seriously, which is, I think, its saving grace. But I think it's beautifully shot. The action is like none I've really ever seen. And Keanu is the best at it. He's, you know, broken bones and caused himself a lot of issue. You know, he's given his heart, body, and soul to that franchise.
He does indeed. He loves them as well, and it's important to love what you do. I think, especially in this business.
He loves it.
Let's talk about the directors you've worked with. How much do you love, you know, we spoke about Spike Lee and his own imprint as a director. You know, we spoke the last time for Kingsman and Matthew Vaughn. How much do you love directors who have their own narrative, their own cinematography, their own imprint, their own identity?
I think that's really important. You know, I always love working with directors that are clear about what they're doing. And I only say that because I've worked with some who have not been so clear, and I understand what that experience is like. So I always am in awe of the storytellers that have a clear direction, a clear vision, a clear look, a clear style that's unique, you know, to them. And of course, Spike was absolutely one of those. I got to work with Warren Beatty, and again, that was my first time working with a director who was also an actor in the movie. So I understood how hard that was. I understood what he had to put into it, and I watched him, and I learned, and I saw how he navigated that process.
Well, you have become yourself first-time director in Bruised, so that also requires a lot of applause, because you did your stunts, and you acted, and you directed. So, hey, how was that experience, first of all? That's my first question about the experience of, and the responsibility of directing.
I'm not sure you really want to ask me this question.
I do.
No, I don't think I can tell the truth. Can I tell you guys the truth? Yes. Do you really want to hear the truth, or you want to hear a Hollywood answer? What are you looking for today?
We can have both, so we can compare.
The Hollywood answer: it was amazing. The truth? It was hell. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever been asked to do. And largely, and I'll say this honestly, it's because I was a woman, and because I was a black woman. And the treatment that I endured and that I had to suffer, things I had to go through, what I had to put up with, was unconscionable. Unconscionable. And if I were a man, and if I were a white man, or if I were even a black man, it would have been indelibly easier. But because I was a woman of color, it was hell.
Yeah.
And it's amazing I even made it. It's amazing I got over the finish line. It's amazing it premiered anywhere and that Netflix bought it. It's a miracle that actually happened, because it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my whole life.
And I'm so proud of you that you pulled it off, and you did it wonderfully. And it's the right time to mention the Red Sea Film Festival team, who have been championing women since the inception of the festival. We have 38 female directors at the festival this year, and the Women in Cinema activities throughout the years.
That is incredible.
For us in the region, it is very important to champion women in cinema. And as we've seen at the box office this year, women in cinema work. So do it again.
We do. Hello, Barbie.
How is it to direct actors as well? Because I think you can, as an actor, you know actors. So is it an asset to be an actor director?
Oh, for sure. I think every director, to be a director, you should be required to take an acting class. Like, and a really good one, like Meisner or Stanislavski. You should really have to study so you know the craft. So you understand what it is to be naked and turn around slowly and have everybody watch you. You need to understand the language of an actor, how to speak to an actor. You know, I've witnessed and have been spoken to myself in ways that, you know, don't incite creativity and don't welcome creativity, quite honestly. And I think it's very destructive when directors don't understand how sensitive we can be, how insecure we are, and how delicate the balance is. You know, we're walking on a tightrope, and I think if they don't understand that, it can go terribly wrong, and I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen because they don't have the language or the sensitivity. And I think that was my strength as a director. I think every actor, director, that is their strength, for sure.
Did you keep in mind a lot of the things that you admired about the directors you had worked with and used them yourself? Was it a little bit of the sum of everything you'd learned?
The things I loved and the things I did not love.
Yes.
You know, I kept all of that. You know, I remembered the ways I had been treated that you know, didn't bring out the best in me, and I was determined not to do that with the actors in my film. And yes, I remembered the ways, the collaborative way in which I love to work with the director. So I tried to be a good collaborator. I always listened to what their ideas were. Even if their ideas weren't what we ended up going with, I realized they had to be heard. You know, they had to be heard. People need to be heard. We need to be seen. And then we decide together, you know. And then at some point, because it's really not a democracy making movies, the director does get to decide, but it's not after you've heard and made a conscious choice to do what you think is right for the film. And I think as long as people are heard, I think that's really half the battle, hearing what they have to say.
Everybody, if you haven't watched it, go watch Bruised on Netflix tonight. All right, an easy one. A co-star you particularly enjoyed working with?
Penelope Cruz.
Recently.
I did a movie with her called Gothica. But you know how you fall in love with someone, even if it's a woman, you just fall in love with who they are as a person? I just loved her from the minute I met her. Yeah. She's my number one.
Yes. She's
And
quite
Billy Bob
adorable.
Thornton.
And Billy Bob
I
Thornton,
really
you know.
loved working with Billy Bob too. And that was a scary movie we did together, you know? A scary, scary, scary movie. A scary movie. And he was gracious and kind and respectful. You know, it wasn't easy to go to those places with someone you don't know, but he was very respectful. And so was Pierce Brosnan. He's my Bond, always. My Bond, he was the same way.
All very nice people, by the way.
Yeah.
It's, you know, there are nice people in Hollywood.
There are.
Contrary to Hollywood,
There are.
to popular
There are.
belief.
Yeah.
All right, Halle, your production company. Another round of applause for being also a high-powered producer. Obviously, we spoke about Dorothy Dandridge, and that was like the first time you produced, but now it's a production company, and you are in charge of the projects that you take on as a producer or for yourself as an actor. How much does that allow you to be in control of your craft and to accept the roles you now want to do? You know, you're an Oscar winner now. You can decide.
Well, I've been an Oscar winner for 20 years, and I haven't always been able to decide. It didn't do for me what it has done for some. Let's just put it that way. And that goes back to being a black woman. It just didn't move my needle quite in that way. But as I sit here today, having Halle, that has moved my needle, because now I do get to decide what projects I do. I get to, you know, find a book that I love and say, oh, I want to make this into a screenplay. I get to have an idea in my head that I'm developing right now because I had a thought, and I get to make it into a screenplay. I get to now decide who I work with, the kinds of producers I work with. When I did Bruised, nightmare producers. Now I get to decide who I work with, and I learned so much from that movie. I learned who not to work with. I learned what to look for, what not to do. You know, and so now I get to create my own opportunities, and that is amazing to have arrived at this point and still be here and still be working in the industry in this way and making my own decisions and choices. Is really empowering.
Absolutely. Is it easy to find the right project, the right story, the right thing to do?
You know, I think that's part of it. You know, you have to find something that sort of resonates with me. People have been asking me since Bruce, are you going to direct again? And I thought, absolutely. I won't star and direct, but yes, I want to direct. Well, what? And I haven't known, you know. I thought, well, it'll just have to find me, or I'll find that project again that keeps me up at night. I'll find that special germ of an idea that comes to me. And I just finally figured that out on the airplane flying here.
Well, I know we have a scoop now.
I know, I just figured it out. So, you know, you have to wait until it finds you sometimes, I think.
Again, visceral when you find something?
Visceral, yes, visceral. And I also think, and I learned this from Warren Beatty, that if you're going to direct, especially as an actor-director, not, you know, making a career out of directing, but if you're going to be an actor and then you parlay into directing, he said it best back then, is that it's very important to find something that you know about and that you love, right? And I believed it when he told me that, but now having done it, I'm really clear as to how important that advice was, because as a director, you have to have the story in your head. You have to see it in moving pictures, all of it, start to finish, right? It's your vision, it's in your brain, and it's your job to bring that to the screen, right? So you have to see it. And I just finally, on the plane right here, saw my story, saw what's in my heart. I realized what I knew that I wanted to share, right? And it took me the last 3 years to figure out like what that was. I know that I'm not a director for hire. I'm not gonna go to the next episode of, you know, an episodic. That's not me. But I finally honed in on what I want to say in the world right now.
Dare I ask, at the risk of being rejected?
No. Well, it's a love story at its core, but it deals with the supernatural and time travel and future.
We're gonna watch it.
A good idea, right? I know. It's a good idea. I think so.
We have a lot of Halle lovers in the room.
Oh,
right?
no, I didn't know I had any Halle lovers over here.
Oh, well, I think you do.
I had no idea, and I say that most sincerely.
I want to go back a little bit to mod versus mod, and what you can tell us a little bit more about it, and how much talk has there been already with Angelina, and what are you looking forward to this creative collaboration that you girls will have?
I'm thrilled to just work with another woman, right, and craft a story from our sensibility, from our point of view, right? Because so many times we're characterized in movies, and the writers are usually men, so we're portrayed from their perspective, right? And so there's a female writer, director, Angelina and I are there, and so we're getting to tell a story from our point of view, which is great. She is formidable. I cannot wait to battle her intellectually and physically, because she is formidable.
And also a fellow female director.
Fellow female director, and you know, we had a rocky start, and I think that's been that is going to serve us well in our on-time screen together, you know. But we plan on going all around the world. It's a big action movie. We're going to go all around the world. Warner Brothers bought our screenplay, so we're going to go all around the world. Maybe we'll come back here. As I was scouting around in Old Town today, I was looking around thinking, what little thing can we get in here or there? And for us, it's about going to places that have never been shot before, that have never been seen on screen before. So we're looking for those gems in the world to sort of go to bring the there to this movie, somehow show a different part of the world, things that we haven't seen. So we might be back
And this is exactly what happens when you become a producer, director. The creative juices change a little bit in your head, and you start seeing a place you visit as a filming location, right?
That's right. When I call it, when you're no longer the dancing bear, you start thinking outside that box, and every place you go is an opportunity to shoot a film or to tell a story.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be delighted to have you back in Jeddah. In Riyadh and Ola, we have a long list of places to suggest.
Yes.
So yes, with Angelina, all of you come, we'll have another conversation about
Yes.
rocky start.
Yes. I know, I almost told the story, but we're going to have to wait to hear that story. It's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good one.
I had a rocky start with my best friend. We've been best friends for all our lives, so
You know, and I
these
have
are
that,
the best.
It is, and I have that knowing about Angelina. I happen to know I will be her friend forever. Like we have a commonality of pain and many other things that will connect us. And we've been talking a lot about divorces and exits, and
Shared
we
experiences.
bonded. Let's just say that.
Okay, a little bit on the personal side. You've always been vocal about the importance of looking after your health. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about that and how about it's good to be public about looking after yourself, taking care of yourself, especially in schedules like like a movie star's schedule, which is hectic to say the least.
Yeah. Well, I got diagnosed with diabetes when I was 19 or 20 years old, and that changed my life. I was suffered as I was a teenager, but with diabetes, nothing hurts, right? Normally, nothing hurts, and so I wasn't complaining about it to anyone, and I didn't go to the doctor all the time. I had a single mom, and we went to the doctor when something was wrong. Basically, that was the only time. So I never complained of anything, but when I got diagnosed and I realized what diabetes was, I realized that I had been a diabetic all through my teenage years. But when I finally got my first job on television, a show called Living Dolls, a television show, I had to start working 12 and 14-hour days, and I had never done that before. Whenever I, got tired, I would go to sleep, or I would go eat candy and self-medicate and do all the things that I would do being a diabetic, but now I couldn't do that. So about, 8 weeks into shooting, I passed out and went into a coma and woke up 3-4 days later, and they told me I'm type 1 diabetic. I'm going to be on 34 units of insulin, probably for the rest of my life. Now imagine being a young woman and hearing that, and when you're 19, 20 years old, I thought that was a death sentence. Like you hear you have a disease and you have to shoot yourself with insulin for the rest of your life and change your eating habits and change everything. It was a very scary time. And at first I didn't take it very seriously. I thought, I'm not gonna do this. I've been managing just fine. And then I realized when you're on insulin, you cannot do that. It's very dangerous. So luckily for me, I went on vacation and I ended up in Hawaii. And I met this Eastern medicine doctor that was there. And I went up to him and I said to him, I hear you talking about how you can cure all these diseases and help people with your Eastern medicine. Can you talk to me? And I explained to him, my situation, and he took one look at me. And this is the intuition of Eastern medicine. And he said, you shouldn't be on insulin. Wrong diagnosis. He said, if you listen to what I'm going to tell you to do, I can get you off insulin and get you onto health. He said, effectively, what you've done is you've shut your pancreas down by giving it insulin. Your body wants to work for you, but you have to jumpstart it. He said, so I'm going to send you herbs and roots and vitamins, and I'm going to ask you to make this potion, and I'm going to ask you to drink it 3 or 4 times a day, and I'm going to change it every 3-4 weeks, and I'm going to send it to you all the way from India, because he was from Mumbai, and I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to send you all this, and you're going to have to take it, and you're going to have to work with me, and you're going to have to little by little lessen your insulin, but take this potion. And I trusted him on a leap of faith. I go back to LA, and my doctor says, if you do this, I'm no longer your doctor. I think you're going to kill yourself, and I don't want to be a part of this. So without my doctor, my Western medicine doctor, I just went on this journey with this guy on this Ayurvedic medicine, and in 3 years, I weaned myself off insulin. It was scary, but I weaned myself off insulin, and about a year or 2 after that, I started changing my diet and my exercise, taking it very seriously, and 2 or 3 years after that, I got off oral medication, and I've been this way now for 18 years, and I just manage it with diet and exercise. And it changed my life. But that level of concern for my health and what I ate and exercise made me technically the healthiest person I knew. And I had diabetes, but I was much healthier than my friends, and I think staying away from sugar has served me well in every aspect.
I have one more question, so I'll ask about Respin and Pendulum, the wellness companies that you created, and how important is that, on the parallel of your multiple talents as an actress, director, producer, etc.
Well, without our health, we have nothing. Without good health, I couldn't work. I couldn't create film, I couldn't direct, I couldn't act, I couldn't produce. So without health, you really have nothing. And I've always known that since these early years. Without my health, I would not function. So that's been sort of, you know, Pendulum and now Respin Health, which we're going to launch pretty soon, that deals with menopause and perimenopause, because that's where I'm at. I think that's something that I think I can be a light. I can shine some light in a dark corner, because menopause is something that as women we just don't talk about. I think we're ashamed to talk about it. It's been so stigmatized, and society tells us that after we reach after we're out of our childbearing years, we're no longer valuable. You know, so I think it's time for us to reclaim that narrative and change that way of thinking. So having good health and, you know, stepping into our own and to ourselves as women, I think is really empowering and very important.
For sure. All right. Well, time flies when we're talking to you. I'm going to say this from the heart. You're a beautiful person, Halle Berry. And it's such a pleasure to have you open your heart to us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you very, very much. I look forward to tomorrow.
How'd you manage this?
Nice and steady, guys.
كله شغل هدول ما حيكونوا موجودين.